Father, we do thank you for Jesus. Thank you that he came to earth to be one of us, to live amongst us, to teach, to inspire, to transform who we are, to bring to realization who we are, what we're made to be. Help us learn this evening more about who he is, what he did, what you did through him. Help us be alert to how you have inspired the words to be here for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
We are in John chapter 5. And overall, the chapter kind of breaks into three sections. First, there's a miracle, there's a healing at the pool. And then there are a couple of sections in the chapter that where Jesus is talking in reaction to what happens at the healing. So he heals them that, and then people object, and then Jesus starts talking about who he is and how people are responding to him. So he's got the last 2/3 of the chapter. It's kind of like a long monologue, or something scholars will call it a discourse from Jesus. And there's all packed with theology. But it begins in what Jesus actually does. So we'll start there and see how it kind of grows out of there. John 5. Sorry. The healing at the pool. Some time later, we're not sure how much later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. And John doesn't tell us which feast. Some scholars might speculate, but I suspect John didn't tell us which one because he didn't want to. He could have easily told us. Where do you look
Is
like
Jerusalem topographically higher than the rest of the country?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's why David wanted to put it there because it was more defensible. It's kind of surrounded on three sides by kind of sharp slopes. It's a bit of a easy approach from one side, but then that's only one side that has to be defended. So it's mostly it's called Mount Zion. It's a hill. So Jesus went there for a feast of the Jews. There is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate. Apparently there's still a sheep gate. I'm not sure that it's exactly the same one, but it's a country like Judea, you're going to have sheep all over. So the sheep gate's not too unusual, but there probably was a sheep market or something like that there. So at this time there was also a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, or some texts have this Bethesda or Bethsaida, or there's a bunch of variations in the way that the text had it. And which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades, or 5 porticos is the older word for it. Scholars used to say, no such thing. Dangerous thing for scholars to say. The archaeologists eventually found the pool. It was actually within the grounds of a church, one of the churches there, and they found the remains of the pool. And what was odd about it, they thought, well, at 5 colonnades around the pool, they thought it was kind of shaped like a pentagon, but it's not. It's a rectangle. Colonnades top and bottom on no sides, and then it has one in the middle. There's actually 2 pools connected to each other, and they have that colonnade in the middle. So it's got 5 colonnades, and it was, I guess, known for that. But why John tells us that, I don't know. I don't know that there's any theological significance there, but it's just kind of John often throws in these details of geography in Judea or Galilee. It's like he was there, he saw how far it was, and what the distance was, and what color it was, and he just throws in those details.
But is it possible that the authors, especially Luke, where they have a purpose to defend the gospel being a true story, based on true story. So you kind of add some historical facts, so that in case somebody later on, after dozens or hundreds of years, they'll say, yeah, there was indeed this event, or there was this place. Like us today, sometimes you have to take a picture with the newspaper, like, like a proof that, hey, it was taken on such a date.
Right.
So maybe he adds certain places and events and all of that to add veracity or
I think,
authenticity.
yeah, Luke was probably well trained enough as a writer to do that consciously. I don't know that John was. John has a very simple vocabulary. He's not a sophisticated writer. I mean, he has some sophisticated thoughts in there, some deeper thoughts. But as a writer, he doesn't show too much cleverness in that way. It's possible, but yeah, it's just to say, hey, I was there, I saw it. Like, well, for example, we soon find out that this man was there for 38 years. Well, John didn't see that. And he doesn't tell us how Jesus knew that. Did he ask him? How long had you been here? Well, 38 years.
Maybe it was a famous landmark.
Well known in Jerusalem. Yeah.
Like some of the beggars in Old Town. I've seen them so often, I've come to know some of them pretty well.
Oh, yeah. 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 Okay, so John is sketching the scene of the story here. He's at the pool. And here a great number of disabled people used to lie, blind, lame, paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well? That's kind of a famous question. Like some people would say, duh, of course, that's why he's lying there. he wants to be able to get into the pool. But in some ways, it's not, it's possible that the man really did want to get well. And for 38 years is a long time. He was apparently had a lifestyle. He had some means of getting food and getting along in life that way. Maybe, I don't know, it's not sure how would he react to Jesus' statement? Who else would come into this pool and say, do you want to get well? Why are you here?
Maybe Jesus detected some attitude of resignation or self-pity that was not commensurate with somebody who really wanted to get well. Maybe he was making a comfortable living off his begging. I've heard in some parts of the world, parents disable children so that they can make more money as beggars.
Right.
So this is really stretching it. But
oh, right. And if he's not right at the edge of the pool, maybe he's not really trying to get in.
It's also normal, like in the case of Jesus, he has some kind of a way where he develops relationships first instead of going and walking. I'll heal you. You're healed. You're healed. I mean, without people's response. But in this case, he invites some kind of response, and he wants to be sure that this person requests it. Instead of, I know God has done things for us without us requesting, but in this case, he seems to be inviting the person to respond. So there's this request.
Yeah, he's initiating something
Yeah.
there.
And also, it seems now that going to your class, I'm reading the Bible so differently. You spoiled me. Now I'm reading it now. I'm thinking, well, what does it really mean? So, you mess with my head now. But I'm thinking, and everything that Jesus did, he had a teaching lesson in there, if not for the immediate audience, for the reading audience, for the implied readers and so on later on.
Yeah, and I think it applies too to us. Are there areas of our life where Jesus might wonder, do you want to get well?
Isn't it that Jesus also asked the blind man, was asking, please heal me, and why do you want, are you sure you know what you're asking for? So So I guess it's really like he's communicating that if this is really what you like, is this really what you like? You know.
I mean, don't we pray to God? I mean, people sometimes reason and say, well, God already knows what I need, so why should I pray? But God does want us to pray. Again, because to prayer we depend on Him. You know, there's that part of us having that relationship.
Because something can happen to him, and then, oh, you healed me, I didn't like. Now I don't have a means to beg for money because this is my livelihood. Now it's gone. So it's just like, do you really want it? If you really want it, you know, you say so. It's not just like healing anybody. They really have to ask and request. I guess this guy is not asking, so now.
In some ways, the question could kind of alert the guy that, hey, you know, don't take this lightly. Life is going to change, and mentally be ready for that. Wow. Well, of course, the man has no understanding at this point who Jesus is or that Jesus can heal him. All he knows is it's a stranger. Maybe he was expecting Jesus to give him some money. And instead Jesus asked him this strange question. So he answers verse 7. Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. When I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. And some of manuscripts include the legend there that when the water was roiled or bubbling, then there was an angel stirring the water, and the first person then would be healed.
What if you stayed in?
Who's steering it?
Well, yeah, they think it's the angels, but it's probably some air in the spring that was feeding the pool that would cause some
Carbon dioxide bubbles.
warming. Yeah, it could be carbon dioxide.
Bubbles.
I don't know, yeah.
Very
Carbonated bath.
Carbonated.
I wonder if it has a record of people getting healed in the past.
Yeah, one person, could have had a psychosomatic healing, and the reputation, goes out from that point. So, oh.
Do other contemporary Jewish writers mention this tool or this process, like Josephus or anybody else?
I don't think so. I suspect not. Otherwise, the archaeologists would, the critics would have said there was no such tool. John seems to be the only one that refers to it. Now, other places, places in Greece had similar legends that they have pools of water that were supposedly known for healing people whenever the water is stirred. So this kind of story is not unique. But anyway, so the man explains that, well, no, he doesn't really answer the question, but he says, I can't get into the water. Implies that he tries to get in, but everybody else beats him to it because he doesn't have anyone to help him into the pool. Well, then why is he there?
Gets to see all his friends.
Well, I guess they have a fountain. They probably do have a little community there, but I suspect too that it's a place where Jewish people felt that they gained some merits by giving alms. There's some text that would say that almsgiving was a means of atonement as well as giving a sacrifice at the temple. So some of the more religious Jews would go out and try to help somebody, and so they may well have gone to the pool for that very purpose. So it would attract a group of people there. So Jesus tells him, well then, get up, pick up your mat and walk. At once the man was cured, and apparently something happened in there that caused him to know that he was cured. So he picked up his mat and walked.
Hmm.
You'd think that he would say something. You'd think there would be a conversation there. John doesn't tell us anything about it. It's like, okay, I'll get up and get out of here. End of story? Well, no, not the end of the story. The day on which this took place was the Sabbath. And so John suddenly tells us the significance of the story. Oh, this happened on the Sabbath. And unless the readers had some context in Judaism, they would not have understood this significance. That, well, what's wrong? So what? That could have no more significance to them than the 5 porticos around the pool. But it's very significant for the Pharisees. Verse 10. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." It was a burden. Of course, well, the Ten Commandments said, keep the Sabbath day. Don't work. Work 6 days. Rest on the Sabbath. So the Jews, and desiring to keep the law correctly, listed what kind of work was prohibited. So they would have how can you carry? Well, they said you can carry something that's small enough to fit in your pocket. That's okay to carry on the Sabbath. These are the kind of rules that they would come up with. You could walk, the distance you could go in an hour. You could go to another house in Jerusalem or something like that. So they put boundaries on what was defined as work and what was not. Now this man was just way off the charts on that, carrying his mat.
Mat? That's too light. Unless their mats are heavy. Yeah.
Well,
Sleeping bags.
I doubt that he had a really thick mat.
Sleeping bag
It wasn't
mat.
healthy. But man, the man had been resting for 38 years. What's wrong with him working?
30-year Sabbath.
Well, that's not the way they looked at it, of course. They said, it's the Sabbath. You can leave your mat there. You don't have to pick it up and carry it. They could say, it's nice you've been healed, but leave your mat where it was. Come back later and get it.
What a lack of focus.
Yeah, it is. Here this guy was a fixture in Jerusalem, and the Jews didn't say, "Wow, this is really astounding." No, they said, "No, hey, this guy carrying his mat."
But it was the instruction of Jesus.
Oh yeah, right. So that's what he replied. Verse 11. The man who made me well said to me, "Pick up your mat and walk." Says, well, that was good enough for me. How conscious he was of being the Sabbath, I don't know. One day he pretty much alike to another to him. But it's like in verse 11, kind of it implies that this man who made me well, the fact that he could make me well, gives him authority. That's a pretty authoritative person. And he said it was okay for me to carry my mat. So there.
Do you think Jesus required him to pick up a mat to be healed? Is it part of
Well, he was healed before he picked it up.
Yeah.
Because it may be a sign of faith if you can walk, but carrying your mat because you were just healed may present that the guy was picked up his mat.
Or maybe the question would be, was Jesus giving that instruction to evoke certain complaints from the Pharisees to create an issue?
In terms of the healing, picking up the mat could have meant that you're not going to need this mat here anymore. You don't need to camp out by the pool of Bethesda anymore. You've been healed. It's done with. You've got a new life. You're going to have to find a new place to do it. So in a way, that's kind of a finality to the healing. This is a permanent thing. This is not just you're healed for one day. retrospect as to what the man did. He just said, well, okay. He just did it, There's no conversation, no discussion as to why or anything like that. So he did it. So verse 12, they asked the guy, who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk? Huh. The man who was healed had no idea who it was. For Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. So they were still there. These Pharisees had pounced on the guy even before he got out of the pool of Siloam, or Bethesda. So I'm getting the wrong pool in there. Yeah, they got on his case pretty quickly, apparently, but Jesus was just on his way. No time to talk. Just kind of stirring it up. But in terms of telling the story, it gives a little suspense there, because John will come back to this story, because it's kind of turns the tide on the Jews' reaction to Jesus.
And it shows that here again Jesus is putting himself as one who's above or greater than the temple, or greater than the law. Think of N.T. Wright. His thinking is
Oh yeah.
infected me now.
Right.
So
he's greater than these ritual rules. So Jesus had slipped away. Later, Jesus found him at the temple. Now that was a good place for the man to go. He was prohibited from the temple for 38 years. Not just that he was unable to go, but he was prohibited because he was lame.
I think the question there for 13 is, why did he slip away?
Yeah. He didn't want a stoning at the pool.
Maybe because
Was there danger? I mean, the scripture didn't say any danger at this point, right? That he slipped away. But maybe he did foresaw danger, or maybe it will hasten it. I don't know.
Right.
or to make an observation.
It could have been, yeah. He was
Like
just
he
kind
would go
of
far away
watching
and
to
see
see what would happen.
what's going on.
What are these Pharisees going to do?
And also,
Just like the Pharisees were watching him sometimes. Is he going to heal on the Sabbath?
and also, it seems as though he didn't want to stir things up too much until he was ready, until the time was ready for
Right,
him to
yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
He
So
was
he kept it down.
metering.
Yeah, he used a lot of
the
parables and
animosity.
hidden sayings and tell him to keep quiet
Not
because
yet
his time wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
So looking back now, that book was really an amazing book.
He was Jesus was in control of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Wright, I like the way that Wright presented it. It just makes so much sense. I just like the way he presented it.
Wright's a persuasive writer. Okay, then verse 14, Jesus found the man at the temple and said to him, "See, you're well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." Well, here are some theological questions, I guess. Is he implying that the man was lame because he had been sinning?
That's good too. Maybe he was like a 15-year-old boy trying to steal and then stay away from the guards, and then maybe he fell, become invalid.
You have a whole story.
Wow. Man.
And then for 38 years he became like that. Maybe he's now 50 years old and say, "No, because of my stupidity."
Yeah. You should be in the Screenwriters Guild. You can turn the story of Cinderella into a two-hour movie. Well, yeah, we don't know. He could have. Later, John deals with that very question of whether the man was blind in that case because he or his parents sinned, and John said, well, neither one. Sometimes our problems are because of our own sins, and sometimes they're not.
So maybe that's the question: do you want to get well? It's just like because you become invalid because of your stupidity. Now, do you really want to get well after 38 years? Of course.
Yeah.
So now he's saying, make sure that you don't do the stupid thing again, or it's worse can come.
Well, he hadn't done it for 38 years.
Before he was well.
He may have been 38 years old and might have just been born that way.
Well, yeah, we really don't know. What,
But you are well again.
well, right.
I mean,
It'd be interesting too that the Pharisees had just accused him of sinning. So when Jesus tells him stop sinning, would he make that connection? Would he think that Jesus was talking about the same
the
thing?
Sabbath.
I don't know.
No, Jesus had told him to go ahead. and
Yeah,
walk,
right.
so
Yeah, it's
he would have
like
said-
that would be a puzzle. What
So
do you mean?
Jesus is referring to something much greater than walking about on the Sabbath.
This man is not very talkative.
Yeah. But it does make you think. If somebody goes to you who you know has authority and say, Mike, stop sinning. You know what I mean?
How did you know?
Suddenly your mind begins to imagine,
Yeah.
what does he know? You know? And then it will connect it with sickness. I mean, that's why, this is difficult. It doesn't
Like
say
with
much.
the Samaritan woman,
You cannot say much.
he knows the
Yeah,
place.
yeah. He knew something there, right?
Or is this the author's message for us? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, some have speculated that the man's sin was in not witnessing to Jesus more, But well, he didn't know. Jesus had slipped away.
Mm.
So we really don't know enough about the man's situation to know what his sin was.
And this study note seems to indicate that it's something worse. They're talking about eternal punishment as opposed to another illness. Yeah, at least these writers thought so. These people who wrote this guide.
Yeah, something worse than being lame for 38 years. That's pretty serious.
Hmm.
It's kind of a scary thing for Jesus to say to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, he said that to this woman who was caught in adultery,
Go
but
and
he
sin
did,
some
yeah,
more.
but he didn't say the warning of something worse may happen to you. He just said, sin no more,
Yeah.
right? Anyways.
Isn't that anyway, that's another topic. I heard that actually doesn't belong in
Yeah.
the Bible.
Yeah, we'll have to get to that when we get to chapter 8.
Yeah, anyways. Interesting.
So or something worse may happen to you. Well, yeah, I suppose you sin in some places and you'll get stoned for it. It would be worse,
Mhm.
even this side, in this age. So it could refer to all sorts of things, the sins and the punishments. Anyway, the man went away and told the Jew, he ratted on Jesus.
Why?
Jesus told him to stop sinning, and immediately he goes and tells him who it was. I guess it's just an irony in the story there.
So Jesus introduced himself.
The man would have no way of knowing that there was anything wrong with reporting who it was.
Okay.
Yeah, but he introduced
Maybe it's
himself
time for
for
Jesus
him
to
to be.
That's true. Yeah,
Because at
yeah.
first I don't know who's the guy.
Right, so Jesus
Yeah,
introduced
now
himself. Now
now-
you can
now
tell
you-
people, right, who it was. Jesus could have easily stayed incognito if he wanted to, but he revealed himself, and
No,
he put the man in a situation.
you be
What's the
the
man going to do with it?
you be the evangelist now.
The unwilling evangelist, unwitting even. The man really doesn't have a clue as to
Witness either.
what he's dealing with yet. But who is this? The man can heal, but whatever. So anyway, so he went back and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. I guess they'd had enough of a conversation to find out a name. Well, then, okay, that sets the plot up for the story. And the next section is to how Jesus is going to respond. Verse 16, because Jesus was doing these things, plural, on the Sabbath, the Jews persecuted him. The Greek word can also mean prosecuted. The same word used for a trial. They bring him to trial. And in the ancient world, you didn't have to go before a judge to have a trial. You could have a trial on the spot. And it was, and You could accuse somebody of murder, and if you've got had the witnesses with you, you could prosecute right there on the spot. And if the person being prosecuted had witnesses with him that showed, that other fellow over there did it, that person could be accused on the spot and condemned. It was a very free-for-all court system. And as this story goes, they start by accusing Jesus. He turns the tables on them and accuses them. So that kind of courtroom thing is going on there. He keeps talking about witnesses. He keeps talking about judgment. There's resonances there with a kind of a courtroom. Whether this is, whether that's what they were actually doing, or John is just making the most of it in terms of the words he's choosing to use. But that's kind of the feel for what he's giving there. That this is a confrontation legally.
So is this prosecuting of Jesus here, that is within the Jewish system of laws, not the Roman?
Right.
Because in the book of Acts, with Paul, they were very afraid of what the Romans will do and so forth. So there's this conflict between, should we prosecute him the Jewish way or Roman and so forth. So Paul, appealed to the Romans. So this is just mainly allowable by the Romans as long as it's within the Jewish religious system.
Yeah, for petty things, Romans didn't want to get involved. They allowed the normal, the pre-established customs of the people to carry over for, minor infractions of laws or whatever was involved there. Now, of course, in this case, it would have been a religious offense. Of course, the Romans would have no way, they couldn't judge this, whether they've offended the Jewish religion. It has to be the Jews that do that. And that gets into it later when this tug of war between the Jews and the Romans as to the Jews want him killed, but they don't have the authority to kill, so therefore they want to trump up some charges that the Romans will accept for death penalty. There's a little play there between two different courts. So the Jews were persecuting him, began to persecute him. And Jesus responds to them in verse 17. My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working. We're missing a lot. John is reporting only the key statements in this exchange. He would have said a lot before that to set it up as to why this statement is authorizing him to do what he did, to heal on the Sabbath. There were a couple of things, a couple of kinds of work that the Jews said were allowed on the Sabbath, and one was to give life. Giving birth on the Sabbath is okay. To save a life, if somebody's life is actually in danger, yes, you can heal that.
How about
You
milking
can pull them out of the pit.
How about milking the cow and milking the goats?
Yeah.
It will be sick if you don't
Yeah,
get
well,
the milk.
they would take their animals to drink water, and they would also milk the cows too. So that was some kinds of work were allowed. Another kind of work that they said that God was involved in. He was giving life, continuing to give life even on the Sabbath, but he also continued to judge on the Sabbath, because if you'd stop judging, then it wouldn't matter what you did. So obviously God continues to judge on the Sabbath, and these are the very two things that Jesus is saying that he's doing on the Sabbath as well. He's giving life and he's judging. But he's saying, God does it, so I can do it. And they didn't like that rationale. For this reason, verse 18, the Jews tried all the harder to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. In a general sense, all the Jews would agree that God was their Father. He was the Father of the nation, and Israel was called God's Son. So that was within the realm. But Jesus was claiming to be a unique Son, not just in a general sense, but a Son in such a way as to have divine privileges. like the prince would have the privileges of the royal family. So he was claiming this equality with God. And John is summarizing a lot there, to get to that. The thinking involved in it. And John is agreeing with it. Yes, Jesus' claim here to be working in the way that God is equivalent to claiming to be equal with God. And Jesus, digs this ditch deeper as he goes along. He makes it ever more evident that is exactly what he's claiming.
That's a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
Definitely, at that time, the Jews, especially the religious leaders, believed that Jesus broke the Sabbath. From our perspective now, and how we understand the Sabbath, did he break the Sabbath?
I don't think so. There's theological reasons, and then there are legalistic, exegetical reasons. Theologically, he was born under the Old Covenant, and Paul says he was born under the law, and he lived without sin. So he would have kept those rules. And if we look at what is actually written in the laws of Moses, Moses is not prohibiting the kind of things that Jesus is actually doing. It's the traditions of the Pharisees that the Pharisees had developed. In trying to ensure that people kept it properly, they had made it much more strict than it had ever intended to be. As Jesus argued, well, if you can pull a sheep out of the ditch and on the Sabbath, then why can't you heal somebody? You can cut the foreskin off of somebody on the Sabbath. Why can't you make them whole? You're doing something better. You're healing. You're bringing God's will to be done, and that's something that should be done on the Sabbath. You're liberating this poor woman who was bent over for 18 or so years. He was liberating her, freeing her, whereas the Pharisaic rules wanted to keep her burdened until sundown. It's just kind of a reversal because of the mindset that they had about the way the Sabbath should be kept. So Jesus was, and I think the Adventists are probably good about bringing in a kinder, gentler Sabbath. And for that, they've always been big on hospitals and having medicine practiced on the Sabbath. That's all. They've always been okay with that. And you can see in the Old Covenant, that's the kind of thing that good should be done on the Sabbath. So that's a reasonable position. Of course, we read in the New Testament how the Sabbath itself is no longer necessary. But even at the time that Jesus was working, the kind of things that he did were acceptable. God wasn't just setting up artificial restrictions to make life more miserable for people. So verse 19, Jesus gave them this answer. Verily, verily, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. It's like father, like son, like chip off the old block. It could have been a proverb back then, and Jesus is using it to say that my Father is God. That's who I'm copying. And in a way, if we read his logic there, he's saying, whatever I do is going to be okay. Because it's all going to be, it's like pre-endorsed by God the Father. And that's, that was beyond the range of acceptance for the Pharisees. For the Father loves the Son, and Jesus explains it more in verse 20. The Father loves the Son, shows him all that he does. That too could have been a saying You know, it could have been in the carpentry shop in Nazareth. You know, the dad loves his son, is showing him how to make a living, what to do. Shows him everything he does, explains how to do it, gives him the whole feel for how to go about life.
Apprenticeship.
Hmm?
Like as an apprentice.
Apprenticeship, yeah, that's a good word. And the Father loves the Son. In this case, Jesus is saying, God loves me in a special way, more so than he loves you. He's not showing you these things. Well, in a way, God is trying to show them these things through Jesus, but they're not getting the picture. But the Father loves the Son, shows him all that he does. Yes, to your amazement, he will show him even greater things than these. Rubbing it in. What kind of greater things than healing a man who'd been lame for 38 years?
At that point, hadn't he resurrected anyone?
Well, no, I guess not.
That's it.
At least not in this gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not sure how the other gospels mesh with that. You know, the widow at Nain, or maybe a resurrection from the dead. Yeah, that could be a greater one. Jesus' own resurrection.
Yeah, that's where he's going anyway, verse 21.
Well, it's interesting that he says, Jesus is saying here, that God will show Jesus even greater things.
And they'll be aware of it. Because they'll be amazed at it. So that seems like his own resurrection as well.
Yeah, I think that would point to a resurrection.
You're amazing.
Could also refer to judgment, which he gets into a little bit later here. But, the resurrection certainly happened within the lifetime of these people he was talking with. And then verse 21 talks about raising the dead, giving them life. Just as the Father raises the dead, gives them life, something that was permitted on the Sabbath, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it. In a way, he gave that lame man life.
Mhm.
Moreover, the Father judges no one. That's something the Father was allowed to judge on the Sabbath, but Jesus is saying, the Father has entrusted all judgment to the Son. Jesus is claiming this divine privilege, responsibility, exclusively. He says, God's not even doing it anymore. He's given it all to me.
That must have stirred up a lot of opposition.
They look
And
around
then you
for bigger
honor
stones to pick up.
And so you will honor me.
It's too much for them.
Yeah, he is really roiling the pot.
It's kind of funny that a while ago we're saying that he sneaked away to avoid persecution, but right after that he gives all this sermon message to get persecuted. You know.
Right, he's really, he's giving them, evidence. If they want to accuse him of blasphemy, they've got plenty of evidence here.
Yep.
The things that God gives life. No, he's given that power to the Son. The Father judges. Oh, he's given that power to the Son too. And reason, verse 23, that all may honor the Son, just as they honor the Father.
Wow.
Yeah. And what kind of honor do we give the Father?
As how much we honor Jesus.
Yeah, it's worship.
That's worship.
Yeah.
This is, this is a scripture that really shows that Jesus Christ is divine, saying that he is honored as the Father. Oh, that's blasphemy. I mean, from the perspective.
It is really startling. And he who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. Now, this here, John is using the language of the messenger, which in ancient days the messenger had same authority as the person who sent him. You know, the king of Persia couldn't go to the Jew province over there and make a deal. He had to send an embassy, and they couldn't radio back and find out, hey, is this okay? They had to have the authority to make the foreign policy deals on behalf of the emperor with full authority of the emperor. What they said went. And Jesus is claiming that kind of authority, representing God. And in Matthew, he says that the church has been given that too. Whenever 2 or 3 agree, bind something, that's bound in heaven. Whenever we loose something, it's loosed in heaven.
But I think probably during the time of John, he has a purpose for writing this. Probably there were issues that involved putting down Jesus, not recognizing his divinity and all of that.
Yes.
So he writes this to really show the people that, hey, what you're doing, you think you honor the Father by, regarding Jesus as a mere man, or this, actually you're not honoring the Father.
He could even be a great man. He could even be a resurrected man.
Yeah, still it doesn't honor the
He was
Father.
like Elijah that said God said, oh yes, you're good enough to be in heaven. I'll bring you there. But John is saying it's a lot more significant than that.
Kind of gives a clear definition of Christianity, versus non-Christians.
That we, as it says later in John, if we get our understanding of who the Father is by who Jesus is. That he reveals. Whoever has seen Jesus has seen the Father. That he is the complete revelation of what God is. And the way we respond to Jesus is also the way we're responding to God the Father. Verse 24, I tell you the truth. Whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life and will not be condemned. He is crossed over from death to life. But as Jesus will go on further to narrate, soon here, this issue of whether the person's condemned or not is not just in whether they believe in God, but it's in the reaction to Jesus. So here the Pharisees were judging Jesus on how well he kept their rules. Jesus is saying, no, the way you're going to be judged is by whether you accept me. He's kind of changing the basis of judgment, the law court. So we are to believe in Jesus and to believe, and that's equivalent to believing in him who sent me, or to believing that God sent him, believing that Jesus has the full authority of God. Those are all connected there. And that person has already crossed from death to life.
Who was he? Who is he? The
Well,
believer?
whoever believes. Whoever hears my word and believes. That person has crossed over from death to life. So here there are some people who are dead. They're walking around, talking, being very self-important, but they're dead.
Spiritually,
And Jesus is saying they need to cross over from that method of existence to real life, what life is really for. See, he's talked about giving life, but he's not just talking about raising people from physical death. He's also talking about giving people the kind of life, the significance in life, that what God has designed us for. Some people are missing out on that. They're dead. And Jesus is going to say, hey, here's new possibility for a new way to live, a new purpose for living. And this is how you go about it, and it's centered in your response to me. Verse 25, I tell you the truth, the time is coming, that's future, and has now come already. This is what the scholars call the already and the not yet. It's now come when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. In a couple of verses, he'll talk about how those who are physically dead will hear the voice. But he's also saying it's happening right now with those who are spiritually dead. Maybe, they were never spiritually alive. So I'm not, the metaphor is straining you there. But yeah, they were not living before, and he's calling them. And if they hear his voice, not just physically, the sound waves are vibrating in their ears, but if they respond to his voice, that sense of hearing, if they respond to him, then they will live. They'll have life.
So the Pharisees and the others who heard this, it probably went right over their heads. Even for us, we have to sit down and think about what is he saying. He's speaking spiritually, physically.
Right. And I'm not sure here how much John has
But in his own
translated it into
His readings.
words that the Greek world would understand, and how much of it, how well does this come across in Aramaic? Well, I don't know. But yeah, Jesus might well have been talking over their heads, but that would make them mad too. What's he getting at? Well, I don't know, but he sure seems to think he's pretty important. So the time's coming, and has already come, when the dead will hear, will respond to the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live.
Now, to hear the voice of God, contrast that with to respond to the message. Because those are dead initially. I mean, they're dead.
Yes.
And yet they heard.
Right.
Now, they will not be able to respond if in the first place they don't hear.
Yeah, if they don't physically hear, they can't respond. Yeah.
That's right. So God gives them also a gift of understanding. Because if you don't understand,
Oh, right, yeah, they're dead before.
spiritually speaking, I mean,
he has to
spiritually.
awaken them in order for them to be able to hear.
So they're like, I'm saying, the way I look at it, there's almost like two miracles or two things that God does. Like people who are blind, people who are dead. All of these are metaphors. Without God making them understand, they won't respond. So does God give people understanding, or is that something that we decide to do?
Yes.
That's
It seems to happen in such a way that it's can't be separated. That the two are happening, in lockstep.
No one can
God
come to the Father.
Enables us, and we are responding simultaneously.
based on our free will, because free will isn't there too. And that's where the difficulty comes, I guess, with the predestination.
And
It's
also,
all God or it's all us.
Yeah, yeah. Which is it? Where's
Yes.
the emphasis there? Yeah, and then some verses clearly put the emphasis on God doing the work first.
right.
Yeah.
And others will describe it as us responding.
God
Responding.
responds.
So it's both.
Interesting.
So let not man put asunder what God is trying to do. So he's saying that this time will come when people will hear and respond, and then we'll be living. For as the Father has life in himself, verse 26, so he has granted the Son to have life in himself, and this inherent life. That's a characteristic of divine life. He's not, as philosophers would say, a contingent being. He's not dependent on anything else. He is self-living. He has life within himself. And God has given Jesus authority to judge because he is the Son of Man. Here he's gone from this title, Son of God, to Son of Man, seemingly meaning the same thing.
Okay, so this Son of Man is not the it seems to be more than a human being, which is the way the term is normally used.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes
This is like the
we
Daniel-
will
it's like the
act as
Daniel Son of
if,
Man.
yeah, the Son of Man is a human title and the Son of God is his divine title. And of course, Jesus is both
Both.
divine and human, but those we can't really equate it with those two particular titles. Both titles refer to the whole person.
But when John wrote the Son of Man here, again, he has a purpose. I mean, Jesus used it
Yeah. Why did
because
he change
people,
the term?
people knew the term, and they have a definition for it.
Yeah, there's the book of Enoch, which is some Jewish speculative book about the same time, talks about the Son of Man having a vision and going to heaven. It's quite an interesting book. It's written in the style of Revelation. It's the style they call apocalyptic, where the man has a vision of heaven and the angel escorts him around and shows him where what's going on. And he says, "Oh, what's this?" And the angel tells him. And at least in the book of Enoch, it's Enoch himself turns out to be the Son of Man. he was told about the Son of Man, this wonderful figure in heaven, and all of a sudden, it's you. So the story illustrates at least that people of that time period were interested in this term, and we kind of had some speculations about who is this Son of Man. The term is used frequently in Ezekiel just to refer to Ezekiel, the prophet. It has very flexible in its use. I mean, it's just, of course, aren't all men sons of men? But by using it as a title, they're kind of suggesting that it's a distinctive person, a representative of humanity in some way. And Ezekiel was, in a way, that way. He was acting as the priest for all humanity. Jesus here is the priest for all humanity. And God has given him the authority to judge. And this thing about the time is coming and now it has come, that's characteristic of John, is to bring this future things into the present. He's saying your future is already being set by what you're doing now. But it's not some far off day. You need to respond to the future now. If you're preparing for the life of heaven, well, prepare now. You can't put it off. The way you live is going to be the way you live. What's the matter, Merv?
It's 8 o'clock. That's it.
And the time now is. Right. Well, then we'll need to quit. A couple of verses there about the judgment, the future judgment. We can deal with those next time. Let's close in prayer. Father, we do thank you. Jesus is our life, and he has authority over us. Our quality of our life, our purpose of life, depends on how we respond to him. So help us learn more, help us continue to fasten our eyes on Jesus, as the book of Hebrews says, and to run with patience, perseverance, continuing to work, to live, to do what he says, and to hear in the sense of responding to what he says. We ask your help in that, because we know that without your help, it cannot be done.